out because I keep taking my time. Now I have my ID. I had my insurance cards. Everything got lost. So now I got to start from scratch. My birth certificate was in there. My social security card was in there. I got to find all this stuff again.
Got to start back over, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry you're having those dilemmas. What drugs are you using, love?
Hard and dope.
So crack and dope.
Yes.
How were you introduced to those drugs?
2 milligrams. A mere 2 milligrams is all that separates life from death. Visualize a single grain of salt, so minute it nearly vanishes against the backdrop of your skin, resting delicately on your fingertip. Now imagine that seemingly insignificant speck is, in fact, fentanyl. It possesses the devastating power to halt your heart, paralyze your lungs, and extinguish your life before your body even registers the fall. This is far more than just another drug crisis. It's a silent, creeping mass casualty event playing out in real time on the streets of America. In 2022 alone, synthetic opioids brutally claimed over 100,000 lives. By 2025, this already horrifying number threatens to become just another statistic, fading into the white noise of our daily existence. But these aren't just numbers on a page. They're the men and women huddled for warmth under our overpasses, the veterans seeking solace in doorways, and the teenagers who fled home only to stumble into a danger from which there is no escape. They didn't choose death. They were fighting tooth and nail for survival. In lives defined by bone-chilling cold, relentless violence, and crushing psychological pain, a single pill offered a fleeting illusion of escape, a momentary spark of warmth. But today, that pill has become a lethal game of Russian roulette. The supply is irrevocably poisoned. Street dealers are now pushing counterfeit tablets laced with deadly doses of fentanyl and xylazine, creating a toxic chemical cocktail that baffles even the most advanced modern medicine. Right now, as you're listening to this, someone is likely overdosing, alone and unseen, in a forgotten alleyway. There's no one to call 911, no one rushing to their aid with life-saving Narcan. They are slipping away silently, fading from existence because society has, consciously or unconsciously, decided their lives are simply expendable. Welcome to Homeless U.S. News. Today, we pledge to confront the harsh reality head-on. We refuse to look away. We're embarking on a deep dive into the mechanics of the fentanyl epidemic, exposing the chilling reasons it has become the primary predator of the unhoused.
So I kind of lost my mind.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Are you struggling with any addiction out here?
Yeah, I have been for like 10 years.
Can you tell us what you struggling out here with?
At the moment, dope and coke. Well, crack, not dope. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, hard and
yeah,
dope.
Exactly.
How were you introduced to those drugs?
My asshole ex-boyfriend kind of tricked me into it, but I'm not gonna blame him. It's my fault, but yeah, he kind of tricked me into it.
And challenging the fundamentally broken systems that allow this ongoing slaughter to persist unchecked. This isn't just a story about addiction. It's a damning indictment of the collapse of our moral obligation to our fellow human beings, to our neighbors. Stay with us, because the unvarnished truth we're about to uncover is the most powerful weapon we have left in this fight. Part 1. The chemistry of extinction. To truly comprehend why this crisis is fundamentally different from the heroin epidemic of the 90s or the crack epidemic of the 80s, you must first understand the brutal economics of synthetic death. Heroin demands poppy fields, ample sunshine, dedicated farmers, and the rhythms of the seasons. It requires land, an inherent reliance on agriculture. Fentanyl, conversely, requires only a clandestine lab, a handful of readily available chemicals, and a chemist with the knowledge to combine them. It's 50 times more potent than heroin and an astounding 100 times more powerful than morphine. Because of its extreme potency, it is incredibly compact. A package no larger than a shoebox can contain enough lethal doses to wipe out the entire population of a medium-sized city. This makes it a smuggler's ultimate dream and a user's worst nightmare. The cartels have strategically shifted their entire business model away from agriculture and toward pure chemistry, flooding the streets with a product that is both incredibly cheap to produce and terrifyingly addictive. By 2025, the street supply has mutated into something even more horrifying than we could have imagined. We're no longer talking solely about fentanyl. We're now confronting tranq, fentanyl cut with xylazine, a powerful animal tranquilizer primarily used on horses and cattle. This dangerous mixture prolongs the sought-after high, but at a devastating cost to the user. Xylazine is not an opioid, which means naloxone, the standard overdose reversal drug, is frighteningly ineffective against it. While Narcan may restore someone's breathing, they can remain comatose due to the xylazine, left completely vulnerable to assault, robbery, or the unforgiving elements while unconscious and helpless. Even more tragically, xylazine causes the human body to literally rot from the inside out. Users develop horrifying necrotic skin ulcers, open wounds that stubbornly refuse to heal, often appearing far removed from the injection site itself. Take a walk through the sprawling encampments of Kensington in Philadelphia or the infamous Skid Row in Los Angeles, and you will witness firsthand the devastating physical toll this drug takes. People with limbs swathed in bandages, moving like haunted ghosts, their bodies disintegrating while they are still very much alive. The unmistakable stench of infection hangs heavy in the air. This is the grim chemical reality confronting the homeless population today. They are not simply battling addiction. They are fighting a toxic, unregulated supply chain that treats them as expendable lab rats for the latest deadly synthetic experiment. When a person living on the streets purchases a pill that deceptively resembles Percocet or Xanax, they are, more often than not, buying pure poison. The margin for error is essentially non-existent. And for a population already lacking consistent access to even the most basic healthcare, clean water, or even a simple mirror to check their rapidly deteriorating wounds, this terrifying new wave of drugs represents nothing less than an accelerated death sentence. Part 2. The Geography of Despair. The fentanyl crisis does not affect all segments of society equally. It flourishes most aggressively where despair is most concentrated and pervasive. By 2025, cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Phoenix have become the undisputed ground zero of this epidemic. The open-air drug markets in these cities no longer lurk in the shadows. They operate brazenly in broad daylight, seamlessly interwoven into the very fabric of the sprawling homeless encampments. In San Francisco's beleaguered Tenderloin district, the streets are disturbingly lined with what locals have grimly dubbed the fentanyl fold. It's a haunting, disturbing posture adopted by users, bent sharply at the waist, completely unconscious yet somehow still standing, frozen in a gravity-defying stupor. It is a haunting image of human suspension, a physical manifestation of a life tragically paused by the insidious effects of chemistry. The sidewalks are a chaotic, heartbreaking collage of sleeping bodies, discarded clothing, and the ubiquitous discarded foil wrappers. It is a scene that evokes less a modern, thriving American city and more a hastily assembled field hospital in the middle of a war zone. For the homeless individuals in these areas, the drug is frighteningly unavoidable. It's often cheaper and more readily available than food. In some particularly desperate markets, a single blue, a fentanyl pill, can cost less than a bottle of clean drinking water. When you are perpetually starving, constantly freezing, and deeply traumatized, and a mere $5 can buy you 4 precious hours of oblivion, the choice becomes terrifyingly rational in its own way. The barrier to entry is virtually non-existent, but the geography of despair is also a carefully constructed trap. Dealers deliberately target homeless encampments because they understand that the customer base is, in effect, captive. They understand all too well that a homeless individual cannot simply leave the area to seek a better life, to escape the cycle. They are geographically and economically trapped within a few unforgiving city blocks. In Los Angeles' infamous Skid Row, the sheer concentration of social services ironically attracts people in desperate need, but that same concentration of predatory dealers ensures that they remain helplessly addicted. This creates a deadly death zone, from which escape seems virtually impossible. In parts of downtown Phoenix, the brutal, unrelenting heat, combined with the physiological effects of opioid use, creates an even more lethal cycle. Opioids severely impair the body's ability to regulate its own internal temperature. When it's a scorching 110 degrees outside, and a person passes out on the sun-baked asphalt, they suffer excruciating third-degree burns and debilitating heat stroke long before the overdose can even ultimately kill them. The very environment itself becomes a deadly weapon when combined with the potent effects of the drug. Part 3. The self-medication of trauma. We need to shatter the demonstrably false narrative that homelessness is simply a lifestyle choice fueled by a superficial desire to party and indulge in reckless behavior. The reality is far more tragic, far more complex, and far more heartbreaking. The vast majority of people living on the streets are struggling with profound, often untreated trauma stemming from a multitude of sources. Many are veterans silently carrying the invisible scars of war, haunted by memories that refuse to fade. Others are survivors of unspeakable domestic violence who fled their homes in a desperate attempt to save their own lives, only to find a different, equally insidious danger lurking on the streets. Mental illness is rampant within this population and overwhelmingly goes completely untreated. Schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and severe clinical depression are commonplace occurrences. In a functioning, compassionate society, these debilitating conditions would be addressed with comprehensive therapy and appropriate medication. In our current society, however, the street offers a different, far more dangerous, and ultimately destructive form of self-medication. Fentanyl provides a powerful, almost instantaneous detachment from the harsh realities of the world. For a woman sleeping in a park, constantly terrified of being attacked and violated, fentanyl effectively numbs the all-consuming fear. For a man relentlessly tormented by voices inside his head, fentanyl temporarily silences the deafening noise. It's a crude, deadly form of self-medication for a population that the healthcare system has largely abandoned and forgotten. Consider the deeply troubling story of John, a 46-year-old veteran living in a tattered tent in the sprawling encampments of Los Angeles. He severely injured his back during his military service and was initially prescribed powerful painkillers to manage the chronic pain. When the prescription inevitably ran out, the excruciating pain didn't simply vanish, it intensified. On the street, heroin was both cheaper and far easier to obtain than a desperately needed doctor's visit. Then, almost overnight, heroin vanished, ruthlessly replaced by the far more dangerous fentanyl. John isn't actively trying to get high for fleeting moments of pleasure. He's simply trying to quell the physical agony that screams in his spine every time he lies down on the unforgiving, cold concrete. This is the devastating cycle that traps so many. The trauma leads to the street. The harshness of the street amplifies the existing trauma. The readily available drug numbs the trauma, however briefly, and the drug ultimately keeps you trapped on the street, caught in an endless loop. It's a closed loop that is almost impossible to break without sustained external intervention. The sought-after high is no longer about euphoria or pleasure. It's about mere maintenance, about just surviving. It's about temporarily not feeling the biting cold, not feeling the gnawing hunger, and not feeling the crushing weight of shame that accompanies such profound loss. Part 4. The failure of the system. Why is this humanitarian crisis unfolding in the wealthiest nation in the documented history of the world? The answer lies in a catastrophic failure of policy and infrastructure that has been decades in the making. For decades, we have stubbornly treated addiction as a crime to be punished. filling our already overcrowded prisons with individuals who desperately need the care and treatment of hospitals, not the cold indifference of a jail cell. Even as we tentatively and haltingly shift toward a more enlightened public health model, the necessary resources simply aren't reaching the people who need them the most, the people whose very lives depend on them. Naloxone, the life-saving antidote to opioid overdose, should be as readily and universally available as fire extinguishers in every homeless encampment across the country. Yet, tragically, it is often in alarmingly short supply. In many cities, dedicated outreach workers are overwhelmed and stretched thin, carrying only a handful of precious doses when they realistically need hundreds to even begin to address the scale of the crisis. The bureaucratic process of distributing these potentially life-saving tools is far too slow and cumbersome to keep pace with the rapidly accelerating spread of fentanyl. Furthermore, the barrier to entry for addiction treatment is impossibly high for a homeless person. Imagine trying to attend a daily methadone clinic when you lack a car, a phone, or even a reliable clock to keep track of time. Imagine attempting to check into a detox center that demands official identification when your ID was stolen during a recent city sweep. Imagine trying to maintain sobriety when you were discharged from the hospital and thrust right back onto the very same street corner where the dealers are waiting to capitalize on your vulnerability. By 2025, we are witnessing a subtle but noticeable shift in policy, particularly in states like California, with the implementation of care courts and Proposition 36. The state is tentatively beginning to move toward compelled treatment, finally acknowledging that simply leaving people to die on the streets under the guise of civil liberties is a profound and unacceptable failure of basic human compassion. However, the essential infrastructure needed to effectively support this significant shift is woefully lagging behind. We are mandating treatment, but the available beds in treatment facilities simply aren't there to meet the growing demand. We are clearing homeless encampments, but the supportive housing options are already completely full and unable to accommodate the displaced individuals. The result is a predictably tragic revolving door. People are arrested or hospitalized, stabilized for a mere 72 hours, and then discharged right back into the exact same conditions that fueled their devastating addiction in the first place. It is a system meticulously designed to manage the problem, not to actually solve it at its root. We are merely applying flimsy band-aids to gaping, life-threatening bullet wounds. The glaring lack of coordination between housing services, addiction treatment programs, and mental health care creates chasms and gaping holes that vulnerable people fall through every single day. Part 5. The economic and social costs. If the moral and ethical argument fails to move you to action, then consider the stark and undeniable financial one. The unchecked fentanyl crisis among the homeless population is rapidly bankrupting our cities. The escalating cost of emergency services is astronomical and unsustainable. Every ambulance ride, every emergency room visit, every police intervention drains taxpayers of thousands of dollars. In 2023 alone, the U.S. healthcare system funneled billions of dollars into overdose care, with a significant portion of those funds allocated to uninsured patients living on the streets. A homeless individual with untreated addiction often utilizes emergency services dozens of times a year, placing an unbearable strain on the entire system. This superutilizer phenomenon results in longer wait times for everyone and widespread burnout among dedicated first responders. Paramedics are experiencing profound compassion fatigue, responding to the same overdoses at the same encampment shift after shift, witnessing the same preventable tragedies unfold time and time again. Beyond these staggering direct costs, there's the crippling economic impact on local communities. Businesses are increasingly forced to close their doors because customers are too afraid to literally step over lifeless bodies to enter the store. Public transit becomes a shelter of last resort, driving away paying commuters and further exacerbating the problem. Tourism plummets, impacting the livelihoods of countless workers. The vibrancy of our once thriving urban centers is being steadily eroded by this escalating crisis. In San Francisco, major retailers have fled downtown, citing legitimate and well-founded concerns about the overall safety of their employees and valued customers. This loss of vital tax revenue triggers a devastating downward spiral, leaving the city with even fewer resources to effectively address the spiraling homelessness crisis. Socially, the cost is the slow, insidious erosion of empathy and compassion. We are witnessing a hardening of hearts on a national scale. When people are repeatedly exposed to the same scenes of abject misery day after day, they eventually stop truly seeing it. They cease to see the individual human being and begin to see only a nuisance, an inconvenience to be avoided at all costs. This dehumanization is incredibly dangerous and ultimately self-destructive. It paves the way for cruel and inhumane policies, for hostile architecture meticulously designed to deter the homeless from seeking shelter, and for a society that callously accepts premature death as a natural and unavoidable consequence of extreme poverty. We begin to rationalize that some people are simply unsavable, a convenient lie that conveniently justifies our own inaction and indifference. We are, in effect, paying for death, not for life. We are squandering billions of dollars to police, jail, and ultimately bury people, when a mere fraction of that staggering cost could provide the desperately needed supportive housing and long-term, comprehensive treatment that would actually break the vicious cycle of addiction and despair. It's not only morally reprehensible, it's also just plain bad economics and a profound waste of precious resources. Part 6. The road to recovery. So, is the situation truly hopeless? Absolutely not. The solution isn't some impenetrable mystery shrouded in complexity. It's fundamentally a matter of mustering the collective will to act decisively. We know what works because we've witnessed it working effectively in isolated pockets across the country and around the world. The solution begins with a housing-first approach, but it cannot and must not end there. Simply handing a key to someone in the throes of severe fentanyl addiction without providing adequate wraparound support is essentially setting them up to fail from the outset. We need a comprehensive, fully integrated model that seamlessly integrates stable housing with aggressive, on-site medical and psychiatric care. We desperately need medical respite centers where people can begin to heal from the debilitating physical wounds inflicted by xylazine and the neurological damage caused by long-term fentanyl abuse before they are realistically expected to hold down a job or even simply maintain an apartment. We must flood the streets with readily available harm reduction tools. Fentanyl test strips and naloxone must be universally accessible, not just to overworked outreach workers, but to the homeless community itself, empowering them to protect themselves and their peers. We need safe consumption sites that move drug use out of the dangerous shadows of dark alleyways and into a supervised medical setting where overdoses can be immediately reversed and where trained staff can build the vital trust necessary to guide people into meaningful, long-term treatment. We must decriminalize the user and relentlessly target the source of the supply chain. Arresting a homeless man for simple possession solves absolutely nothing. It merely adds a criminal record that makes securing stable housing even more difficult than it already was. Disrupting the flow of precursor chemicals and dismantling the criminal networks that actively prey on the vulnerable is the clear and unwavering responsibility of law enforcement. But most importantly, we need to rebuild the fundamental human connection that has been so tragically lost. Recovery from addiction requires a compelling reason to live, a purpose that transcends the daily struggle for survival. For the homeless, that often means restoring their inherent dignity and reminding them of their intrinsic worth. It means creating job training programs that don't automatically penalize someone for having a past criminal record. It means establishing robust peer support groups led by people who have themselves survived the horrors of the streets and emerged stronger on the other side. It means fostering a supportive community that genuinely believes and loudly proclaims, "You are worth saving, you are worth fighting for." Outro. Silence is complicity. The fentanyl crisis among America's homeless is undeniably the defining humanitarian disaster of our time. A tragic collision of extreme poverty, untreated mental illness, and a predatory drug supply, all unfolding in the heart of the richest nation on earth. When we passively walk past a body lying motionless on the sidewalk and fail to even check if they are breathing, we lose a small but vital piece of our own humanity. When we vote for policies that simply push the problem into the next neighborhood rather than actively working to solve it at its source, we become complicit in the ongoing carnage. They are not some faceless mass of the homeless, easily dismissed and forgotten. They are John, who bravely served his country with honor. They are Maria, who lost her job and tragically lost her way in the ensuing despair. They are somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's mother. They are us, stripped of our essential safety nets and left to fend for ourselves in an unforgiving world. This isn't just a public health emergency. It is a profound test of our collective soul, a stark reflection of our shared values. And right now, we are undeniably failing that test. But we don't have to. You can demand better from your elected officials, holding them accountable for enacting meaningful change. You can actively support organizations that provide real, evidence-based treatment, not just inadequate warehousing. You can carry naloxone and be prepared to save a life, becoming a beacon of hope in a sea of despair. You can look at the person on the corner and see a fellow human being fighting a desperate war against a deadly chemical weapon. Despair is easy. It requires no effort. Action is undeniably hard. It demands courage and commitment. But action is the only thing that ultimately saves lives and restores hope. Let us confront this crisis with unwavering compassion, with relentless grit, and with an unshakable vow. No one gets left behind. No one is beyond redemption. This is Homeless U.S. News. We tell the stories the world desperately wants to ignore, the stories that demand to be heard. Please subscribe, share this video widely, and help us break the deafening silence that allows this tragedy to continue unabated. Because silence is the only thing fentanyl needs to win.